Hello class, in this video we are going to do our solve and share activity for lesson 2-6 in math. For this activity you will need your math page, but you will also need one red crayon and one blue crayon. So go ahead and pause the video and get those things, and then once you have them you can resume the video and we can go on. Let's listen to what it says to do.
Draw one red or blue cube at a time to show how many cubes are in the bag. Is there a greater number of red cubes or blue cubes? How can you show your answer? Explain.
Okay, so to begin with, you might be wondering, what in the world is a cube? Let me show you what a cube is. A cube is like a square. Okay, I didn't draw my square very good. But a cube has many sides. So it kind of looks like this. It's a square that has squares all around it. Kind of like a dice. The one die that I put in your bag and sent home with you, that is a cube. It's a square that you can hold in your hand. We call that three-dimensional, but you don't really need to know that. Just know that it's a square that you can actually feel squares all around it. To make it easy to draw, we're just going to draw squares. So pick up your red crayon and draw one red square. Now put your crayon down and look at what you drew. We're drawing it here on the table because it's like we dumped it out of the bag and we're looking to see what's in the bag. So right now, do we have more red squares or more blue squares? Which do we have the greater number of? We have a greater number of red squares, don't we? Because we haven't drawn any blue squares yet. Right now, there were not any blue squares whatsoever in the bag because all we drew was a red square. Okay, so let's draw one more red square. Now look at it. Are there more red squares or is there a greater number of blue squares? There's still a greater number of red squares because once again we have not drawn any blue squares yet. Put your red crayon down and pick up your blue one. And we're going to draw a blue square. It's time to get some blue in on our table now. Now look at the picture. Are there a greater number, in other words, a bigger number or more red squares or blue squares? Which has the bigger number? It's still the red squares, isn't it? Because we have two red squares, but we only have one blue square. So the red squares still have the greater number. Okay, let's draw another blue square. Which has the greater number now? Is there more red squares or are there more blue squares? Do you think I'm trying to trick you by asking that? How many red squares do we have? We have two. Now, how many blue squares do we have? We have two of those too, don't we? We have two red and two blue. Do you remember what it's called when we have the same number of each? Equal. We have an equal number right now of red and blue squares because we have two of each. It's the same number, so it's equal. Let's draw another blue square. Now look at the picture. Which number has which color has the greater number now? Do we have a greater number of blue squirrels, or do we have a greater number of red squirrels? We have a greater number of blue squirrels because we have 1, 2, 3 blue squirrels and only 2 red ones. So the blue squirrels have the greater number now. Let's draw another blue squirrel. Now which color has the greater number? Do we have a greater number of blue or a greater number of red? Well, all we did was we added another blue squirrel, so we still have more blue squirrels than red. Okay, put down your blue crayon and pick up your red one. And I am drawing another red squirrel. Now we have 3 red squirrels and we have 4 blue squirrels. Now which one has the greater number? It's still the blue, isn't it? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 blue squirrels and 1, 2, 3 red squirrels. Okay, draw another red squirrel. Now which color do we have a greater number of? Do we have a greater number of red squirrels or a greater number of blue squirrels? How many red squirrels do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 red squirrels. Now, how many blue squirrels do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 blue squirrels. We have 4 red and 4 blue. We have the same number of each one. Do you remember what that's called? Is that greater than, less than, or equal to? It's equal, isn't it? We have an equal number of red and blue squirrels. Okay, let's draw one more red squirrel and then we will be finished with this page today. Draw one more red squirrel. Now how many red squirrels do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red squirrels. How many blue squirrels do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 blue squirrels. Which do we have a greater number of? Do we have a greater number of red or a greater number of blue? Remember, greater number means the bigger number. Okay, the bigger number, the one we have more of. We have a greater number of red squirrels because we have 5 red squirrels, but we only have 4 blue squirrels. Well, that did it. Well, look at that. It started to change color halfway through. That was kind of silly, wasn't it? Okay, so we have 5 red squirrels and we have 4 blue squirrels. So we have a greater number of red squirrels. Okay, class, that ends the solve and share activity. Go ahead and go to the next page and click on the next video for our visual learning.